We're here today on RealAgriculture.com at CropWeek in Saskatoon with Bruce Scherr. Bruce, please, you're providing a keynote today at the Pulse Days. Please, what are you going to talk about?
Well, actually, the theme is that world economy is changing in dramatic ways, and that we have new middle-income consumers expanding all over the world, in particular in Asia. When we look at the dramatic growth and expansion of China, India, Indonesia, among some other countries in that region. And when we look at where the pulse industry has predominantly established what I'll call a marketing beachhead, it's Asia. And that's really a tremendous opportunity for the industry. The Asian economies continue to exhibit growth well beyond any other countries in the world. We've seen a migration of literally hundreds of millions of people between just India and China alone, from subsistence to culturally defined middle income status, demanding more and more value-added food and infrastructure products in that part of the world, and the pulse industry is very well positioned to take advantage of that. You know, things as simple as China's investment in its infrastructure, which is well documented in terms of investment in water systems, bringing water from the south to the north and in the east, center, and west of the country, to roads, development of roads and waterways and highways and railroad systems, linking up what were the hinterlands with now urban and city expansions. China's infrastructure expansion has been phenomenal. You know, at the peak, they were utilizing concrete at a rate of 1.5 Los Angeleses per year. It's mind-boggling. There were, in pre-recession, global recession, they were representing 60% of the expansion in petroleum and energy use. Well, they're back. You know, they slowed down a bit during the recession, and they're back. But they've coupled that with another infrastructure program, which is an appliance program. They're putting an appliance in every Chinese household, whether it's a stove or a refrigerator or a washing machine. And you know, while as simple as that sounds, think about the dramatic ripple effects of that. Number one, you need electricity and a grid to handle that. That in itself is further expansion, job creation. Number two, Chinese have traditionally been buy a meal at a time and eat a meal at a time. I mean, they still utilize what are called wet markets, where you essentially buy your poultry or your meat, your pork, and you bring it home and eat it the next day because there are no refrigerators in households. Well, once those appliances are put into those households, shopping patterns change. You can shop for days at a time as opposed to meal by meal, which means that the prospect of retailing, value-added product, shelf product, what we take for granted is embryonic there, with literally, a billion people. What a tremendous opportunity. Pulse industry here in Canada has a foothold in that economy already. It's something that I think they need to have very definitive strategies about, so that they can sustain and grow that business prospect over the years.
So what do you think some of those strategies or some of those growth opportunities are? What do you think Canada needs to do in terms of the pulse business?
Well, I think that that an economy like China, India, and by the way, I think India is the retro rocket. It's growing dramatically, but it's slightly behind China due to their geopolitical issues and certain social issues. But I think that as that mitigates, those forces mitigate, they become another tremendous expansion nation. And there are others in Asia. I don't want to be just so Chinese and Indian centric, but what it says is when an economy is just emerging out of subsistence into value add, middle income status, they tend to be big consumers of bulk commodities. As they expand, two things happen. One, they process more at home because of job creation, and number two, they tend to import more value-added product. So the industry needs to take a very well thought out, researched view of where there will be this dichotomy between expanding bulk utilization and expanding value add, and get a good mix between and a good interplay between the pulse growers here domestically and the valuators in the value chain that will help support and pull pulse production forward through end market use and consumer products.
So finally, how much growth do you think there potentially is for the pulse business in Canada?
Well, I haven't quantified it. It's a little hard to say. In fact, as I mentioned to the group, it was interesting to have a keynote speaker. I felt like I knew less about the pulse industry than anybody in the room. I tend to think about more macroeconomic and commodity-based issues. I think it's big. I mean, anytime you've got literally hundreds of millions of new consumers with rising incomes and an interest in healthy dietary expansion and maybe some unhealthy dietary expansion too, this is a great opportunity. And to put it in perspective, if China has migrated 500 to 600 million people in the last couple of decades from subsistence to near middle income or culturally defined middle income status, demanding more infrastructure and related food products, that is greater than the population of the United States. That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. The old jokes about the business opportunity was to put a chicken into every Chinese family's pot or a can of beer into every Chinese gentleman's hand. That's not so crazy. Not so crazy at all. And I think that's the viewpoint you have to have, but with focus and well-researched, definitive ideas and strategies to achieve a further expansion with select consumers in those societies.
Well, Bruce, thank you very much for joining us today.
My pleasure.